Hello and welcome to another Blender tutorial brought to you by the Lowest Art. My name is Emmanuel Okafo and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. In this Blender tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a facial rig using Rigify. So if you don't know, this is something that you can do, you can do it. So I'll be showing you guys how to set that up, and the awesome thing is that I'll be showing you how you can integrate that face rig onto a pre-existing rig, which is mostly the case. And like, I will even advise to kind of split the workflow into different parts. So for the first part, you want to focus on just creating your rigify character or any kind of rig that you like, and then you can now merge the different face rigs together. So that's basically what we're doing today in this tutorial. So let's get started. I already have the starting scene. So basically what you're seeing here is a kind of early stage of generating rig using the Pupa Addon. If you're interested in it, I have a link in the description that you can check out for yourself. But it's just like Mixamo inside Blender. So once you have this point, you can just go ahead and bind your character. So this generates a rigify rig for you. So you can use it straight up to animate your character. You can do any awesome thing, and the great thing is that you have tons of libraries of animation here inside the Pupa that you can just select and apply onto your character, and it works great. We also have a lot of customization too. So before this tutorial turn to a kind of advert for this add-on, let's move on to what we'll be trying to achieve today. So basically we have our basic rig and we're looking to add a facial rig. So for that, let's kind of clean up our scene to import or to add the new facial rig setup. So what we're going to do is just delete stuff we don't need from the rigify, and then I'm going to move this Pupa rig onto the collection that we're going to call male, and I'm also going to call this male rig, and I'll also delete the stuff that I don't need, and we are set. So also I'm going to go to the modifier stack just to keep things organized. I'm going to call this body rig, because we'll be adding another modifier, amateur modifier, and we want to be able to identify it or differentiate it from the one we already had before. So everything is set now. We can go ahead and disable this modifier, and you can see if we move this, none of this work. And for the final step, we can just turn it off. So this is what we have now. So now we can just go ahead and start generating the rig. But before we go on, just to make things even more simpler, you want to go into the edit mode. So if you have your mesh combined like this, you want to go select, if you hold down Shift Alt, you want to select this edge loop and hit V to kind of rip it apart, and then want to select this part and make it a separate mesh. The reason I'm doing it like this is to kind of keep things organized, so we can just focus just on the head without any distraction. Combining them is quite easy, as is the most easiest things to do. So I'll be showing that later, so you stick around for that. So let's get started. Okay, so you want to make sure you have your 3D cursor in the 3D origin. So you want to hit Shift S and do cursor toward origin. So if you don't know, you can also do Shift C, and it's going to do the same thing and place the cursor in the origin. So once you have it there, you want to go Shift A to add a rigify amateur. So if you check here and you don't have this enabled, you want to make sure you go to your user preference and search for under the add-on, you want to search for rigify, and then you enable that. That's that. So now we can go ahead and add a human meta rig. So once you add the human meta rig, it might vary in scale depending on the unit of or how you scaled your model. Like you can see now, this is quite small compared to our model. So of course the next step is to scale it up. But importantly, you don't want to scale it up in the object level, because what happens when we scale this up right now and we go generate, before it even loads, there'll be an error. The scale will be wrong, and things will not work as it's supposed to work, as you can see. So that's why you don't scale it up like this. So the way you scale it up is to jump right into edit mode and make sure your pivot or your pivot point is set to 3D cursor. Okay, and now if you scale it, it's going to scale from the 3D cursor like this. So so if we scale it now, it's going to scale from the 3D cursor. So basically we want to scale it up to roughly match the shape of the character. So at this point we can test it again. And like if you're starting out with Rigify, it's always good when you make changes to generate the rig to kind of debug it early on, so you can always undo any changes that you have done that might have caused the error. So that's one thing you want to keep doing back and forth, because as much as this stuff is modular, um, as 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 much as this is modular, you can run into unpredictable errors. So as we can see, we're getting an error there, which is really important that we kind of do that. So I'm going to go back a step. I'm going to go back again and add the human rig, and we'll make sure this is set to 3 cursor, and make sure we're in edit mode, and then we scale this up once more. So that's why it's good to kind of, after you make like a big change, you want to generate the rig to kind of preview and make sure that everything is all set before you go deep into it and make a lot of changes and then it doesn't work at all. So that's something. So as you can see, we have it looking good after we've scaled it. So now we can move on to the next stage. So for the next stage, we want to go ahead and delete all the unnecessary bronze we'll not be needing. So we don't need the body rig, so we're deleting that. So we delete the head, we don't need that, we don't need it. So importantly, you want to keep this bone, this particular one. If I can isolate it, you can see it's called face bone. So if you delete this bone, the whole face rig will not work. So you want to make sure you have this in place. So once you've done that, you can generate another. We can test it out again to make sure everything is looking and working great. So it's kind of making sure you're not creating any errors. So as you can see, it generated perfectly for us. Okay, so that's that, and we can move on to the next step. So for the next step, this is the fun part. It's just going in and kind of arranging this to where it's meant to be. So for that, let's move this back to the median point and bring out our move tool. I'm just gonna pull this outwards and just roughly position it. Okay, so we can go to the tool and make sure we have X mirror turned on. So what this allows us to do is we can move one point and it transfers onto the next point. So you get the gist. Next, we want to make sure we click on enable snapping and want to set it to face. And now we can start working. So let's if you hit L in Blender, it's going to isolate islands, so we can use that way to work in a more cleaner interface to make sure we're kind of placing things where it is meant to be placed. Okay, so I'm going to use that to select this island and do Shift H, and it's going to hide everything except that. And now I can just scale this and move this in place. And now since we have our snapping feature turned on and have set it to face, it can allow us to just easily place this and it snaps where we want it to snap. Okay, so you should just have a very nice easy job just moving this into place. And the great thing, since we have our X mirror turned on, this is being transferred onto the next state, the opposite direction. So one thing you want to bear in mind when moving points, you want to make sure that some points are kind of like this, but you want to make sure you use the C to kind of select them so you can move them together. Okay, so this is what we have now and it's looking good. We can enable in front so we can see it like this. So you want to just match it, and once you're happy, you can do the same thing for another. So next we can do the one for this brow region. So this one is the eyebrow, so we need to place it here. So it's actually pretty fun and you can do it in a couple of minutes. Next, a great thing about this is that they named it, so you can see we have cheek, so you can place that well. And this is kind of the cheekbone area, bone, so you want to place it there. This is the cheek area, which is good. And now for the jaw, you want to just position it to align with the jaw. So like there are some of these bones that you might not need, and I'm going to show you how you will handle that later. So let's just adjust this. Let's set up the ears. Okay, so we can just quickly move this into place. Okay, so that's set. And so if you go into the mouth, you can see we have the teeth bone, and you have the lower teeth, and you have the tongue. So for this process, since this rig is quite complex, especially in the setup process, you want to disable most of this. You don't want it to kind of really affect the geometry. So you can select them, and holding down Alt, you can click on them not to be deformer bones. For my experience, it might not work exactly as planned, but we'll see. But the goal is to kind of prevent these bones from having any influence when during weight painting time to when we're ready to kind of customize it to match our own design. Okay, so let's just quickly go through this and position all the bones. So I'm going to position the nose area. And okay, so for this, since we have the snapping, we can just click. Seems like three of them are connected, so it's important you pay attention to all of that. So in the front view, we can just snap it. I'm gonna hide this for now so it doesn't distract us. Okay, we're almost done. We can place this, and finally place this one. So you just want to take your time, because if you don't get this right, it's not going to look so good. So it's just good you just do it once and be done with it. Next, let's do for the lips area. So we'll move this in, move this in, move this in. So I'm gonna hide this ones for now, don't need them. Okay, so we are almost done. Let's do the chin area. So just align them. And this one, the nose area. Okay, so I think we're done setting it up. Okay, so we have this particular bone. This is meant to control the eyes. We could set this up to kind of work with the eyes. So what we could do is select the eyes, do cursor to selected, and then select this bone, selection to cursor, so that now the pivot points, the pivot point of this eye bone is sharing the same pivots with the eyeball itself. Okay, so once we have that, let's see, we are all good to go. And now we can go ahead and do generate rig. So as you can see, since we kind of tested each step, we have confidence that it's going to generate the rig without much problem. So we can go ahead and just hide this or delete this. So before we go ahead and bind this, we want to make sure okay, so this is our rig. So before we go ahead and bind it, let's make sure we disable things that we don't want to have re-influence, because they can be quite problematic, and from testing it out I can tell you you want to avoid this. So for the tongue area, I'm going to select all of that, and so if you notice where I selected, I went straight to this layer. So the third to the last is usually the former bone whenever you're working with riggify. So that's what you want to select, and there you can affect the weight of the geometry. So before I'm binding it, I'm just going to that layer so I can access those deformer bones. And if I hold down Alt and go to this bone selection, I'm going to uncheck deform. What this is going to tell Blender is that when I'm applying the automatic weight, which is what I'm going to use, it's not going to apply any weight, um, any influence coming from these three bones, because at least for now I don't want them to be functional. Okay, so we can um, do that for a couple of more bones that we don't want to be functional, so we can check them out. So I definitely don't want these teeth bones to be functional, so they're already unchecked. We'll check for more. Okay, since we are all set, and we can move on. So what we want to do now, so these are the three layers you might want to enable. Okay, so now we can select the mesh, shift select this rig and hit Ctrl P, automatic weight. And it has binded it now. And now we can move this and we have it working. So it's very cool. Most stuff work great right off the back. As you can see, you can immediately get nice blinking. You have full control for most things. Though the next stage is to kind of go in and weight paint it, and I'm going to show you how you can do that quickly. So as you can see, most things just work right off the back, especially if you have like a very nice geometry with nice edge loops and open faces and what is needed. Okay, and so one great thing about this rig, since it's kind of using the stretch to constraint to kind of create like a very nice link between different facial structure, you get this cool kind of stuff. When you move one part, it seems like the whole skin is moving along to kind of get nice skin sliding. So that's why this rig is pretty cool. Okay, so what we'll be doing now is to kind of clean it up and remove weights where we don't need, and then kind of get it ready to combine the two rigs. So for that, it will look messy now. So I'm going to check in front, and you can access this in front by going to the viewport display, and you can access it here. Once you have that checked, you can just display, like, we don't need to display all the individual bones, but we can display this one and this one, because this is the little tweaker bones layer. But for the main controllers, you can get most things done with this particular bones. Yeah, so as you can see, everything is working. So what we want to go in is kind of really dictates where we want to each to influence. So for that, we select the rig. But before we do that, we want to go to this select this object and move this armature, this new one, to the top, so that Blender can recognize it, because if we don't do that, it will not work nicely. So now we can select this armature, select this mesh, and jump right into weight paint. So the most obvious ones are these foreheads, because if we move them, you can see the kind of weird stuff that's going on there. So to prevent that, we can just select the appropriate bone and bring this down, set the weight to 0, and just go in and clean it. And you can do smooth to kind of feather out the influence quickly. So you can repeat the same thing here. You just remove parts you don't want and use smooth. So I have mine set, I put it in a quick favorite, so I can just quickly do that. So that's basically that's a very nice way you can quickly go in and clean up the stuff. Okay, so we just did that quickly one more time for this one, and this is a major one. So let's just remove all the influence. So that's what you probably want to go, you'll be probably going in to do for most parts after this stage. But for it gets most of it right, so you don't have to do too much work. Okay, so you will see some problematic area like when we move it, we're kind of moving the entire head, which is definitely undesirable. So we want to get those bones that are causing that, and the main culprit is usually the def underscore jaw. So we want to just select the parts in the edit mode that we don't want it to influence and remove it. So let's preview. Seems there's more culprit, so we can just click till we kind of identify more bonds that are contributing to this messiness. Okay, I found one, so we'll remove that. Found more. I mean, sometimes at this stage, especially the neck area will be acting quite weird, um, because it doesn't have weight. But we can fix it will automatically fix itself once we combine the rig. So as you can see now, this is what we have, and this is pretty close to the final result. So let's kind of rotate this mouth area, and so it's looking good actually. You can go in and add more influence if it's that what you want. So just ignore this for now. So if you're seeing this in your rig, it's fine. The reason is because we already have like some weights there, and probably it's conflicting with it, but we can just quickly fix it once everything is set. So for the next stage, we want to combine the two meshes that we kind of had before. So we can just select this mesh, join it with this one, and now in edit mode, if you get your edge select, okay, so we have these two selected. You can go to vertex. I have a shortcut for that. What's that forgotten the name. I wanted to kind of show you the exact one. I think is okay, X. So if you delete, you want to um, merge. So you want to search for merge. So you want to search for merge by distance. So that's what you want to search for. And once you do that, it's just going to merge them, and they are one. There's both of them are one geometry now, and it's all combined. So for the final chevron to kind of bring everything together, let's go ahead and bring in our previous rig. So this is our previous rig. So we can combine it by selecting both of them and hitting Control J. So we want to do it the other way. So as you can see, this is we did it, and so we want to select this face first. Shift select the body rig and hit Control J. What happens is that the rig disappears, but it's still there. You want to just hold down Shift and go to this running guide here, and just click on 1, 2, 3, and you have your rig back, and everything should work. If everything is not working, you just basically want to go to this modifier, okay, and make sure you select the right rig. And for this instance, we are looking for male rig, and once you do that, it should work as expected, as you can see. So you like I said, you can go in and clean this more with vertex grip. But one final touch, if you notice when I move the head, the face is not moving along. So that's easy to fix. We can go into the deformer tab, okay, and we are looking for a particular bone, and that bone is called face bone. So I'm going to move this face bone also to the deformer tab, so I can quickly select both of them. So this face bone, I'm going to select that bone and shift select this, and press Ctrl P, keep offset, and that's all. So now we have everything set. Our rig is complete, and we can create animations, as you can see. So everything, all you need to do is to go in and fix the weight. An important weight you need to fix is, if you select this particular rig, you select the mesh and go into weight paint. Since we have the head bone painted, we want to remove those influence that of the face so that we don't have conflicts of interest. So I'm going to select this area and remove. So this is how the face, the head bone influence is going to look like. And that's okay because we have face bones now. And once you do that, everything should work as expected. Well, just turn everything back on, and yeah, so you have everything with full influence. You have the head working as expected. So that's it. We can go ahead and add an animation. So Pupa. So if you really enjoyed this video, please give give this video a thumbs up, and if you wish to see more from me, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't be afraid to check out this add-on. See if it's something you are interested in. It's actually pretty intuitive and speeds up a lot of workflow. It gives you a lot of freedom to be able to achieve all your wildest dreams, and you can always enable your face rig to kind of work in conjunction with Pupa and also your face rig. So that'll be it for this tutorial. I hope this was fun. So bye bye for now. See you next time.